Now, Dr. Sarah Woldoff with, something that I'm really interested in hearing any advice she can give as a behavioral specialist to parents who might be struggling and as a parent, any kind of struggles you've seen on your own and how you're addressing it. So some real world practical advice here.
Hi, how are you? So I am a parent of two children. So I actually have a 7 and an 8-year-old at home that I am doing all of this on my own, including Zoom speech therapy sessions. So I am navigating this myself. The biggest thing right now is really parents are stressed out. They're trying to work, trying to maintain their own existence, and then they're also trying to care for kids. And what we have to understand is that kids are also feeling the impact of COVID. It may not be as clear, but they're unable to go to school, they're unable to participate in activities outside of school, and they're also experiencing loss, but they might be expressing it a little bit differently. A lot of times what we see is some kids actually start to act kind of babyish and start to regress and be a little bit clingy, whereas other kids may be actually acting out. So parents can't always tell exactly how their kids are feeling, and kids can't always articulate their feelings, and they can't always problem solve. So sometimes we see it in the form of disruptive behavior, noncompliance, and tantrums. And I don't know about anyone else on the panel, but I've seen all of these in my own children when trying to navigate schoolwork, when trying to navigate Google Classroom, and all of these wonderful things. But despite all of this, there are things that you can do at home to try and help with conflict resolution and help with behavior problems. The biggest thing I tell parents is to try to keep some sort of structure. And that's hard because I know I sometimes get called in to do a feedback session with a family, or I get called in for a meeting via Zoom, and I have to break from that structure or break from the routine. But to try to get some type of structure together so that your child has an idea of how the day is going. We know that predictability helps in any circumstance, and especially right now, having some sense of predictability will help your child kind of have feelings of comfort and security and have an idea of how the day is going. Some ways this can be done is creating a written schedule or a visual schedule. Many of you have children who are in school, and when they're in school, they have visual schedules, they have token economies, and trying to figure out how to tie these things into the home environment. A great example I did with my own daughter is we made the color chart. I went and got construction paper, I made the zones, I used a hair clip because I didn't have anything else. And she starts her day off on blue, and I follow the same system the teacher does for compliance with her schoolwork. And I drop her clip, because she knows that terminology, if I have to give her 2 redirections. And she has to be up in a particular positive area to earn things that day. But that's not always easy. If you have multiple children, or if you're kind of navigating things, but it is one strategy to definitely consider. And the visual schedule is another one. There's a lot of really great free ones that are available online. Pinterest is a great place. It's not just for crafts. They have a lot of visual schedules and a lot of different ideas that you may want to try. The other thing is to try to make sure you're not just giving your child attention when they're acting out, but you're also giving them attention when they're being good. I think a lot of us struggle with that in the day-to-day, but especially right now.
Can you elaborate on that? How do you give it I know with my daughter's 5, if she's kind of I don't want to say not bothering me, maybe if she's focused on something is the better way. And I want to be oh, I really like the way you're focused right now. How do you praise them for being good when you don't want to wake a sleeping baby kind of thing?
You gave a great example though. It's you just say I really like how you guys are playing quietly right now. I really like how, you're sitting and doing your work right now. And by doing that, you actually increase the probability of your child doing that again in the hopes of getting some sort of praise. And it's the same thing using kind of a star chart or a color clip. It's that same premise is there, that my daughter knows, oh, okay, I do my work, she moves my clip up, And if she moves my clip up to here, I get tablet time. Okay. And then she's understanding the consequence there. You know, the other thing is trying to not just establish a behavior system, but make sure you're willing to follow through. You know, if you're constantly going to threaten to drop the clip, or you're constantly going to threaten to take away the tablet time and then you don't follow through, all your child's learning is that your word means nothing. And so they can kind of keep going with it. Another really great strategy as well is to make sure you build some flexibility into the day and make sure you build other things into the day. What I mean by that is if they have a lot of schoolwork, not all kids have the executive functioning to sit and do schoolwork, and especially a child who might have ADHD or another type of learning need that's in an IEP, they might not be able to sit for 2 hours and do schoolwork. So what I would say is to break it up, like have them sit, they do one subject, and then have them do another activity, whether it be something more leisurely. My children have to do chores. So they go upstairs, they make their bed, they have some routine built in. And then they have some other outside activities. Whenever it's been nice, we've been trying to get them outside. I have a recumbent bicycle. They ride that for 20 minutes for gym class. You know, trying to get some physical activity, because none of us can sit for that long. Even there was a great study that just came out on people working from home, adults, and how the average adult working from home should only expect to get 2 hours of work done a day realistically. And so you have to have the same expectation for your children. The last really great thing to do is to break down tasks. I know there was a lot of discord in my own daughter's classroom, but they had a science project and we had to do it. And so we broke it down into small manageable components and set a timeline for it so that it wasn't completely overwhelming that she had to do her post or write up her science project, but she did small components every couple days until we completed it. So also think about breaking down complex tasks into manageable steps to help reduce frustration and meltdowns. And then you could also use a timer. All the cell phones have a great timer. You can use a timer that signals when it's time to stop working and when it's time to stop playing as another way. And also great, and the best strategy I would say is let your child choose. Giving choice helps to eliminate so many behaviors. So rather than say, you know, we're going to sit, we're going to do math, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, is ask them, like, what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with math or reading? And then let them pick. And by giving them that little sense of control, it really helps to enhance them feeling not so out of control and not so being dictated to. And I do this too, even with minor choices, like, are we getting out of pajamas today? So we've had some days where I let them stay in pajamas for the day. And then the next day we decide we're getting out of pajamas in the morning to give a routine. So those are all like school strategies. But the other thing I think for parents to realize is you're going to see other behaviors that may emerge, especially if your child was receiving behavior services already in their school. And even if they're not, you're going to see things such as acting out behaviors, possibly hitting siblings, possibly destroying work materials. And you have to be able to handle that, you know, both delicately, but directly to make sure they understand. The biggest advice I can give to all parents is that consistency is key. And there has to be a system that works, and everyone has to kind of be implementing it the same way. The other big thing I say to parents is take care of yourselves. I think as a psychologist, I think a lot of parents are stressed out right now. There's a lot going on, and kind of if you think of an airplane, they always tell you put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then you take care of your kid. It's the same process at home too. If your boiling point is hitting and you're getting completely stressed out to the point that you're not really regulated and you're being reactive, it's a great time for you to take a little bit of a break. And maybe that's when we put a break in. So that way you can kind of circle yourself and then be able to manage your own distress to be able to then set up a plan to help your child.
Awesome. All great advice. A couple questions for you, Dr. Woldoff. Angela Mary has a question. Let me see if I'm I have it here, but I think there might be a way to let her actually ask. Angela, can you hear me? Angela, you there? You can ask the question. I think your mic is on now. We'll wait and see if Angela, if we can figure that out. But in the meantime, another question from Dina Kimball, which is definitely something Dr. Woldoff is qualified to answer. How would you suggest an FBA be conducted at this time? And that's a huge question I've been hearing over and over again.
Yeah, that's a really hard question in some ways, because it's not typical time. So obviously there can be some factors influencing the behavior, but there are still ways to complete an FBA and to address some of the behaviors. A couple ways are through parent report forms. Getting parent input on forms is ideal, and there's a couple really great forms that actually are done via, like I use a website called Q Global that's HIPAA and FERPA protected, so I can send electronically any forms to parents. They can fill them out and it comes right back to me digitally, and there's no paper to exchange, and it's all automatic. So that's very helpful, as well as doing obviously a clinical interview with the parent via a website like Zoom. I use Proxy when I do teletherapy. Another option is, if the child is high functioning, to also have a clinical interview with the child and kind of see if you can get a gauge of what's going on. And another great thing is having some data collection, giving a parent, we call it an ABC sheet. It's antecedent is the A, B is behavior, C is consequence. And we have the parent, when a behavior occurs, write what happened right before the behavior occurs and what happened right after the behavior occurs. And then if we know what the target behaviors are, creating a short data sheet is really helpful as well, in an effort to get some of that information. Now, I did have a few cases that an FBA was in progress or in process before COVID happened. So what I was still able to do is send those forms I was talking about to parents and to teachers. So I still could get some of that feedback, even though obviously some of the situations are a little bit different now because environmentally things have changed.
So at this time, are you open to the idea of conducting an FBA or a neuropsych evaluation?
So I am with my FBAs, I'm able to do those a little bit more remotely. The neuropsych's a little bit trickier. So what I've been doing for the neuropsychs is I'm doing the initial intake with the families. I'm sending out my forms. So I'm sending out my emotional and behavioral forms. I'm sending out executive functioning scales for teachers and parents to complete. However, with the testing, and even the APA put out a really interesting email to all of us, saying it could be done, but you have to have someone there who's willing to be like your remote access person. And so that's where you run into a little bit of trouble. What I've been doing, luckily with my space, is I am able to set up my office in a way that I'm able to maintain the 6 feet. I'm wearing a mask. I have the patient sit by a window, and I'm kind of executing the evaluations that are urgent under those circumstances. And what I'm trying to do with the others is do a lot of my background and report forms right now, with a hopeful, hands crossed, to get the next phase done in my office, hopefully in May. And with school being out, I've been having school administrators get the teacher forms completed now, and I've had them facilitating that. And so far it's been seamless. That's been very helpful as well. So that way you can still get that teacher input, even though you don't have the chance for a school observation due to COVID.
That's good news. A couple last questions. First, how can parents get a hold of you? And then also whether or not for any kind, if you're doing anything beyond evaluations, like if you're doing actual therapy, and if you can accept comp ed for those services during this time.
Yeah. So I do therapy as well. And I use something called Proxy, a little bit of a different setup than Zoom, because Zoom has come under some fire lately. So I've been staying away from it. With my practice, I have a website, waldoffandassociates.com. I also have a Facebook page, and you'll see a link actually on my Facebook page. But I just started my own podcast called The Best Behavior Happy Hour. And the second episode is actually going up today, which is actually on COVID and coping. And my daughter is my special guest.
Nice.
and that is available through a couple different platforms, Spotify and a few others. But it's also, there's a link up on my Facebook page. My Facebook page is also Woldoff and Associates. And one of the interesting things, just to share is I overheard my daughter and her girlfriend talking, and that's kind of what started this, is they were discussing COVID. And they were discussing how they hate like not going to school and not seeing their friends, and that like their whole summer's ruined. And it was interesting hearing, because she hasn't really voiced anything. But when I heard her on her tablet, it was a very different story, and all the things that she lost. And then she was crying, saying she didn't want to grow up. So kids are experiencing this, but they just might not be expressing it. So parents really need to really be in tune to what they're seeing in their child, and use that as a judgment whether or not maybe you should seek someone out for something like teletherapy or consultation, even if historically that wasn't a great issue initially.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Woldoff. I just texted to everyone here on the chat those links that you mentioned, and we'll also post them on the website. But awesome. Great advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.